Hello, this is Sarita, and I'm here to help you understand the truth about who you are. So I just wanted to come online and address a question that somebody sent me about my video, which is entitled The Container Effect. And I'll put a link up here so that you can click on it and go and have a look at it if you haven't seen it already. And in that video, basically, I was explaining the difference between the observer effect and the container effect, because the observer effect is what assists us to bring our thoughts and feelings into reality by observing them. So basically we give them life, and the driving momentum behind that creation is our emotions, basically. So that's how we manifest using the observer effect. And the container effect, if you like, is the opposite of that. What happens is that we then hold the capacity to dissolve any experience that in our mind we're perceiving as negative. Okay, so that's a general overview of the difference between the container and the observer effect. And basically, I received a question this morning which said, could I give examples around how to use the container effect, especially in relationship to having older children, so young adults that are making poor choices. So I wanted to address this question because I myself am the mother of young adult children, and they are, of course, in my opinion, children in general, but I think particularly young adult children are a massive opportunity for, if you like, self-reflection, inner work, and evolution towards enlightenment. I really believe that because, of course, our children were so emotionally attached to, we have such attachment to their outcome in relationship to us. And if you're empathic, which I know many of you are, you're intrinsically feeling everything that they're feeling. And obviously, the teenage years and the turning into young adults is a particularly difficult time or transition for people. And when we are intrinsically connected to those people that we've, carried inside our bodies or birthed or raised, depending whether you're a man or a woman or what you've been doing. But, if you're involved in the raising of a child in any way, their choices are going to affect you. So I wanted to address this question because actually I don't think working with the container effect, unless you're very, very adept at mastering your emotions, is going to be a particularly good way to deal with the poor choices or the outcomes of what our teenage or young adult children do. So what I'm going to do now is offer some advice instead about a method that I've been using that I find works really well. So this method, if you like, works in conjunction to or in relationship with the guiding universal principle that everything that we're looking at in this reality is a mirror of how we think and feel. So basically, you could look at everything that's happening in our reality as the expression of what is going on within us. So in other words, we are creating everything that happens in our reality, including and not limited to the behaviors that we see in others. And I know this is really hard to grasp because many of us think that when we're looking at the other, they are their own sovereign being, which they are, of course, and we have no control, if you like. Control is probably the wrong word, but we have no mastery over what they do unless we're using forced control. That's a better way of explaining it. So we feel like we're sovereign beings, and all of the people that we look around and see that we're in relationship to are sovereign beings, which they are. But the thing about all of those people that we see around us is there are infinite versions of each of them, as there are infinite versions of us and infinite timelines playing out. So, for example, if you have a mother and a daughter, let's say, the mother thinks that the daughter that she's looking at is the same daughter in every now moment. And the daughter would think that the mother that she's looking at is the same mother in every now moment. And that's not really what's going on. What's going on is that in each now moment, you are seeing a new version. The mother is seeing a new version of the daughter, and the daughter is seeing a new version of the mother in relationship or through the lens of their own perspective. So in other words, through the lens of the resonant frequencies that they are holding within themselves. Okay. So let's say we've got a daughter who is making lots of poor choices. What the mother is seeing is a reflection of something internally within her, where she holds the choice, the sovereign choice, or has held but continues to hold the sovereign choices of the sovereign choices of making poor choices, okay, or the sovereign experience of making poor choices, or the sovereign sensation or expression of making poor choices. So what the mother is seeing in the daughter is a reflection of her own inner state of being. Just because that inner state of being is not necessarily conscious, that doesn't mean it's not there. So if the mother's kind of made poor choices when they were young, for example, and has grown up and is now making better choices, it doesn't mean that those poor choices are not held in her subconscious field of reality. They're not held within her. They are, because everything that you're seeing out there is held within you as a resonant frequency or a resonant expression of being, because you literally cannot see anything outside of yourself that is not a reflection of something within yourself. So if you are seeing your daughter making poor choices, that is because you are holding within your life or within the field of your reality or within memory fields or ideas or concepts or emotions or actions or feelings, poor choices, either from this lifetime, from your past that you're holding within yourself, which are your shadow aspect that you can't even see or feel, or from past lifetimes. Okay. So it's really intrinsic and important that you understand this first principle in order to help yourselves. There is nothing that you are seeing out there that is not a reflection of what you are holding in here. It's so important to understand this, because the electromagnetic field around your body, the biofield, is the container of all of the light frequency information of your reality. Okay. So everything that you're seeing out there, you're emitting and receiving simultaneously. Okay. It's your emanation that is being reflected in the mirror of your reality that is coming back into you. So think of that you're basically beaming, let's say, a light thought to a mirror. And of course, the mirror bounces the light back and it hits you. Okay. And then you think that that mirror is happening out there, but it's not. It's a reflection of something that you've emanated out of yourself that is bouncing back into yourself that you're then taking as your reality. Okay. So you need to understand this. So having said all that, if you are in a tricky relationship, and in this example, your children are making poor choices, there's a really great thing you can do if you're emotionally entangled in someone in a relationship, which is a lot easier to do than the container effect method. Okay. So in this method, what you do is you basically thank, in this case, the child for being the perfect reflection of how you are loving yourself. Absolutely. Okay. So what you're doing essentially is, this is how I do it. I drop into my heart space and I really think about all of the ways that I am now loving myself. So for example, in my reality, I've changed my whole life because I now do what I love, which I feel is assisting humanity. And that's because it brings me my highest joy. For another example is I meditate daily. I take ownership and responsibility of everything that happens around me. I love and I care for myself. I eat properly. I get enough sleep. I do all of those kind of things. So what I do is I drop into my heart center and I really drop into how much I'm showing up for myself with love and how grateful I am to myself for doing that. And then as I'm in that state of being, I then bring up my child. So I visualize my child in front of me and I send my gratitude to my child for loving themselves as much as they can in their moments, which is the perfect reflection of how I love myself. So I basically say to my child, thank you so much for loving yourself as much as you can, which is the perfect reflection of how much I'm loving myself as much as I can. And obviously, because I've dropped into my heart center and I've got into this state of real feeling my self-love, I then see and understand that my child is actually doing their best to love themselves however they can. Poor choices or not, they're doing their best. And what that tends to do is it brings up reflections of ways that they have loved themselves. And as I'm holding that gratitude for them being the reflection of how I am loving myself, what I see playing out, not always, but a lot more, is they suddenly start to show up in the field of my reality. Sorry, that's my phone going off. They suddenly start to show up in the field of my reality in more loving ways to themselves. So in other words, they make better choices moment by moment. And when I've done this and I've got into a really, really altered state of being and real, real love, I literally see instantaneous results. Not just with my children, but with other people as well. I started practicing it with people who, in my opinion, make poor choices. But what I'm realizing is, of course, that their choices are the reflection of aspects of myself that I'm holding possibly unconsciously or consciously within my own body and field of my reality. So that's the technique to use with your adolescent children, or all children, but I think particularly adolescent children and young adults, because, you know, remember what you were like when you were an adolescent. I made, you know, like 1 billion poor choices. In fact, you know, I really think it's only now that I'm beginning to make better choices because I'm just more conscious and more aware in more present moments. So now I believe I make less and less poor choices in my day-to-day reality. But, you know, we all had to go through that phase where we made poor choices, but we thought we were doing the best things, or we wanted to have the most fun or try this experience. We wanted to do all of these things. And actually, often we made poor choices. And it is just so difficult when you're a parent witnessing your children grow up, because they have to go through their own experience. And obviously, we don't want to be controlling. And I think that for a lot of us, particularly those that are empathic and that are holding a lot of trauma, which many light workers are, our first go-to, because our nervous system is activated with fight or flight, is to try and control. So we try to control our children, assuming that we know better than them, and that we could change their outcomes and save them from the pain and suffering that we've all gone through and all of those kind of things. We're doing it out of love, but we're using, if you like, the wrong methods. And, you know, I've just been through I still am going through a real rite of passage with this as my children are growing up. You know, they're turning from adolescents into young men, and they're extraordinary human beings. But I still am holding this need to control their outcomes. And I'm really having to face it a lot, you know, and really look in so that I don't mess this up and make more and more poor choices. You know what I mean? So this is the method that I found works really well. So I'm going to go over it again. You drop into your heart center and you begin to feel all of the ways that you're really showing up with loving yourself. And when you're really in a state of self-love, you then visualize your child or someone else you're having a difficult relationship with, and you thank them for being the perfect reflection of the way that you love yourself. And so what you're doing is you're emanating this, that they're loving themselves. They emanate it back to you, and it in both realities. So in other words, the version of your child that is more loving to themselves and makes good choices comes into the field of your reality. The one that doesn't make good choices, if you like, leaves, jumps into another timeline, if you like, because we're jumping timelines the whole time, and so are they. So that version that's loving themselves comes into your reality instantaneously. I've seen this happen. And you start this mirror reflection forwards and back to one another. And it's just it's such an amazing practice. It's so beautiful. And it really is, it's like instant manifestation. And because of course you're using gratitude and you've dropped into your heart center, gratitude assumes that the act is already done. So because you're grateful to yourself for loving yourself as much as you can, and you're grateful for them for loving themselves as much as you can and being the perfect reflection of that, it's instantaneous because you are the creator and you've already assumed it's done because you're using gratitude as the state of being. We're thanking something. It's already done. It's already in the present moment. It's done. So I hope that helps this person who asked the question. And I hope it helps many of you out there who are parenting, because wow, being a parent it's a real challenge in relationship to doing one's inner work. And I think I'll try and do more videos on being a parent, because it's the ultimate teaching tool. It's the ultimate teaching tool. I've learned so much from my children. They're so amazing. And of course they trigger us so much. You know, they trigger us. They trigger all our inner child, all our ancestral karma. They trigger our relationship to what we perceive as our future, the way we're acting in the present moment. And so oftentimes as a parent, we're busy and we don't have the time to do our inner work because we're so busy looking after them, you know, just in the practical sense of this third dimensional reality, let alone all the other aspects of our reality, those higher dimensional aspects. So they are the ultimate teaching tool. And it's tough. It's tough. It really, if you're really authentically on this road of enlightenment, you have to face your shadow when you're bringing up children, and you have to be prepared to bring light into all of the things that are painful and challenging. So I will endeavor to do more videos on raising children. Not that I have all the hard and fast answers, but you know, we're all out there doing our best. But I'll share what I've done that I think works. And hopefully this has been helpful to you. Please share this if it's helpful, you think, to someone else. And I send you all lots of love, and particular love to all those enlightened parents out there. Keep bringing in the light. You're doing an amazing job. Lots of love. Bye.